They say love runs deep in families, but sometimes what runs deeper is silence. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd get erased from her own story. Not after raising 3 children, surviving a 35-year marriage, and giving every corner of myself to this family. But life has a strange way of revealing where you truly stand, not with shouts or slamming doors, but with quiet dismissals. And mine came in the form of a group text message I was never supposed to see. It was late March when Ava, my first granddaughter, got engaged. She was radiant, 27, ambitious, glowing with that electric excitement young brides carry. I was so proud. Of all my grandchildren, she'd always been the one I was closest to. I still remember holding her through her first heartbreak, driving 3 hours to her college dorm just to bring her homemade soup and a warm hug. So when she asked me if I could help plan her bridal shower, I said yes before she could even finish the sentence. It felt good to be needed. I poured myself into it like I always had. Thousands of dollars came quietly out of my modest retirement account. I ordered custom linen napkins embroidered with her initials, arranged for florals to be shipped in from Savannah, and even reserved a vineyard-style venue tucked into the hills of North Carolina, just like she'd dreamed. No detail was too small, no request too much. Until one night, as I was reviewing final catering quotes, my phone buzzed. A message from Ava, part of a thread I hadn't realized I was still included in. Can we make sure Grandma doesn't wear her usual Kohl's outfit? This vibe is luxury, not basic. Then another. She gives cafeteria lady energy. And the final nail, from my own daughter Jane. Let's just tell her it's a small event. She'll understand. At first I stared at the screen, waiting for it to make sense. Surely this was meant for someone else. Or a joke. Maybe autocorrect had scrambled something. But no, my name was right there, plain as day. So was the laughter. So was the disregard. The teapot on the stove started whistling. I hadn't even remembered turning it on. I just sat in the quiet, phone in hand, heart folded in on itself like old laundry. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt something inside me crack in a clean, silent way. I had thought my love was enough to earn a place. Turns out it only earned me an invoice. I didn't reply to the thread. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even mention it the next time Jane called. I simply smiled to myself, opened my laptop, and canceled the venue. When the event planner asked if I wanted to reschedule, I told her no. Just cancel, I said. Thank you kindly. That night, I packed up the party favors into a cardboard box, labeled them for donation, and transferred the refunded deposit to the community women's shelter across town. I wrote on the memo line, for the women who were told they didn't belong, because I knew now I was one of them. The day of the shower came, but the venue sat empty. I parked across the street with a thermos of iced tea and watched from behind my sunglasses as confusion turned to panic. Heels clicked on pavement, phones buzzed, doors rattled, and somewhere in the chaos, Ava's voice cut through. "What do you mean it's canceled? My grandma reserved this place." I didn't stay long, just long enough to see the blush of embarrassment on her cheeks. Then I stood, brushed off my slacks, and walked away. Not angry, not bitter, just done. If you've ever felt like the people you loved most couldn't see your worth, this story is for you. Don't forget to like, share, and let me know where you're watching from. You're not alone. It took 4 days before anyone called, not to ask if I was all right, not to apologize, just a clipped message from my daughter Jane. "Mom," she said, her voice already tense, "did you really have to cancel it? The whole thing?" I was folding laundry when she called, pairing socks that didn't have partners, stacking dish towels. I held the phone between my shoulder and ear and replied evenly, "It was mine to cancel." There was a pause, sharp and uncomfortable. Then, "You didn't have to make a scene." "But I didn't," I said, smoothing a crease in a pillowcase. "That's what's bothering you, isn't it? I didn't make a scene, I made a decision." She didn't say much after that, just silence. Not the reflective kind, more like the sound of a door slowly closing. After we hung up, I stood in the middle of my kitchen and stared out the window, wondering when I had started confusing sacrifice with love, and when love had stopped being returned. That week, I pulled the notebook from my hall closet. It was one of those thick, spiral-bound kinds with a navy blue cover and wide-ruled pages. I hadn't written in it since 2003. The first page still had a grocery list, but now it became my confessional. I wrote about the early years of my marriage, how my husband Thomas used to smile at everyone else, but barely looked at me once the front door shut, how the forgetting started small, anniversaries, my birthday, the way I took my tea. Until one day, I realized I'd become a wall clock, visible, useful, but utterly ignorable. I wrote about the years I spent ferrying kids to soccer games, hosting holidays no one helped clean up after, smiling through exhaustion so everyone else could feel cared for, and how, over time, my role shifted from mother to maid, from wife to ghost. There was the time I had outpatient surgery for a lump in my breast. Nothing serious, thank God. But no one called for 5 days, not even Jane. I remember lying in bed, blinking at the ceiling fan, wondering if anyone had noticed I'd gone quiet. I wrote about the bruises, emotional and otherwise, that I learned to hide under long sleeves and polite smiles. About the Christmas I spent alone because Jane said her in-laws were more of a priority that year. About how I stopped decorating the house because no one came. Each night, I poured a bit more of myself onto those pages, not to dwell, but to remember. Because I realized something no one tells women like me: the world doesn't erase us all at once. It happens gradually. One skipped phone call, one forgotten invitation, one offhanded insult about our clothes or our weight or our vibe. Until one day, you're not someone, you're somebody's grandmother. I wasn't sure what I'd do with all of it. The memories, the heartbreak, the receipts. But then, one evening just after sunset, a knock came at my door. I assumed it was Martha from across the street, bringing over a cobbler like she always did when she sensed something was off. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Martha. It was a young woman, early 30s, slim, with soft eyes and a dusty backpack slung over one shoulder. "Mrs. Delaney?" she asked. Her voice was careful, like she didn't want to scare me. "Yes," I replied, keeping the screen door latched. "Can I help you?" "My name's Lily. I'm making a documentary on women over 60. Women who feel like they've been forgotten. I'm traveling across the South collecting stories. Someone at the Charlotte Women's Shelter gave me your name." I froze. The shelter? I hadn't been back in years, but I remembered each face I'd met there. The women who whispered their pain like it might explode if spoken too loud. "One of the women said you changed her life," Lily continued. "Her name's Sandra. She said you sat with her one night when she had nowhere to go and told her she was still worthy." I felt something lodge in my throat. Sandra. She'd had a baby on her hip and bruises shaped like fingerprints on her neck. "She was my mom," Lily added, her voice breaking. "You held me when I was just a baby. I don't remember it, but she does. And now I want to help you tell your story." I opened the door. We sat at my kitchen table, drinking lemon tea over my old floral tablecloth. I told her everything, not all at once. I'd learned to be cautious with strangers, even kind ones, but she listened with the patience of someone who truly cared, not for the drama, but for the truth. That week, Lily moved into the guest room. She helped me organize my journals, scan old letters, and dig through storage boxes filled with memories I'd tried to forget. And then one afternoon, over a plate of chicken salad and sweet tea, she said, "What if we hosted dinner?" I looked up. "A family dinner. We'll call it a legacy tribute. They'll come for the cameras, and then you'll speak, not to shame them, to reclaim your voice." Something inside me stirred, half fear, half fire, but I nodded. "Yes," I said softly, "let's do it." And just like that, I stopped being someone's grandmother and started becoming myself again. Margaret Delaney, woman, survivor, storyteller, and I wasn't done yet. The inn sat nestled beneath old weeping willows, strung with golden lights that flickered like memory. It was the kind of place where weddings are remembered and secrets feel too delicate to speak aloud. I hadn't been there in years, not since Jane's first anniversary dinner, the one I helped pay for but wasn't asked to toast at. Now it was my name on the invitation, Margaret Delaney, family matriarch. The cameras were Lily's idea. So was the gold foil lettering and the phrase "Celebrating Legacy" printed at the top. I didn't mind. Let them think it was about them. I wore the same navy blue dress I'd worn to Ava's high school graduation. Back then, she'd called me elegant. I wondered if she remembered. The guests arrived in clusters. Jane came first, wrapped in a beige cashmere shawl in tension. Her husband trailed behind her, already texting someone. Ava followed, radiant as ever in a cream silk dress, arm in arm with her fiancé, whispering something behind her hand. "This isn't a restaurant?" she asked, eyeing the long table and the camera set up. "We rented the space privately," Lily answered smoothly. "It's a tribute to the Delaney legacy." "Oh," Jane smiled. "How lovely." They believed it, every last one of them, that this was about heritage, about pride, about history. We ate in forced harmony, forks clinked against porcelain. Wine flowed, conversation stayed light, dancing over weather and renovations and holiday plans, never touching anything real. And then Lily gave me the signal. I stood. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice shaking slightly, but steadied by the weight of truth. "It means a great deal to me." They looked up, surprised. Jane's lips formed a half smile. Ava tilted her head. "For years," I said, "I played a role in this family I never auditioned for. The quiet one, the helper, the one who stayed late to do dishes and sent birthday cards even when mine were forgotten, and I never asked for applause. But tonight, I need something." I took a deep breath. To be seen. A hush fell over the room. I turned to Ava. "I read the messages," I said. "I saw what you said about my clothes, my vibe, about how you wanted to make sure I didn't embarrass you. And Jane," I turned to my daughter, "you were part of that. You helped keep me away from a shower I paid for." Jane blinked. Ava's cheeks turned a soft pink, like the flush after too much wine. "Grandma, that message was private," Ava whispered. "Not to me," I said. "It was cruel. And more than that, it confirmed something I'd tried not to believe, that somewhere along the way, I became invisible to the people I loved most." I pulled a folder from the chair beside me. "In here are letters I wrote to Thomas during our divorce, pleading with him not to turn you kids against me, warning him how it would damage you. And here," I opened a second folder, "photos of bruises I covered with long sleeves, empty bank accounts, silent holidays, smiles I forced through teeth clenched so tight I gave myself migraines. Gasps. Someone dropped a fork. Jane's husband looked down at his plate. And finally," I said, my voice growing firm, "this." I held up a yellowed letter, its ink faded but legible. A will from my mother, leaving the Delaney farm to me. She tucked it in her Bible. I gave it to Thomas to pass to the attorney. He said it wouldn't hold up, told me not to fight, but he never filed it. He buried it. Jane's eyes widened. Ava whispered, "Wait, what?" Lily stepped forward then, holding copies of documents, recordings, timelines, all of it meticulously gathered over the past few weeks. "With Lily's help, I filed a petition to reclaim the land," I said, "and we won." Silence. I looked around the room at the people I had fed, clothed, and forgiven more times than I could count, and I said, as gently as I could, "I didn't invite you here to shame you. I invited you to free myself. For decades, I kept your secrets and swallowed mine. But I'm done being quiet. I'm done pretending your indifference didn't hurt." Jane stood, face pale. "Mom, you're humiliating us." "No," I said, my voice calm now. "I'm telling the truth. And if that's humiliating, maybe it should be." Lily clicked off the camera. Ava stood next. Her voice wavered. "I didn't know, Grandma. I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," I said. "But now you do." No one touched dessert. No one made toasts. They left in waves, some in silence, some with stiff hugs. As Lily and I cleared the table, she looked at me with glassy eyes and whispered, "You were incredible." I smiled. "I wasn't incredible. I was honest." She nodded. "Same thing." Later that night, in the quiet of my room, I looked at the copy of Mama's will and thought of her hands, how they used to tie ribbons to the old oak tree every spring, one for every woman in our family. This time, I would tie one for myself, not for who they thought I was, but for who I had always been. The farm looked nothing like it did when I was a girl. The porch had been repaired, the shutters repainted, and wildflowers now bloomed in the places weeds once claimed. But the most beautiful change wasn't in the land. It was in the people who walked it. We called it the Ribbon House, a retreat for women over 50 who had been silenced, overlooked, or told they were too much or too late. Women who, like me, had given everything until there was nothing left for themselves. Every woman who came was invited to tie a ribbon to the old oak tree. One ribbon, one story, one voice finally heard. I watched them come from all over the state, some with nothing but a suitcase and hope. They sat in circles, cooked together, wept together, and slowly they remembered who they were before the world forgot. Then one afternoon, Ava came back. She didn't come dressed for a photo op. No heels, no perfect curls. Just jeans, a hoodie, and eyes that had finally seen the truth. She stood at the base of the tree, holding a frame in both hands. Inside was a printout of that message thread, the one where she'd laughed at me, but now it was gilded in gold leaf. She handed it to me and whispered, "You're not basic, you're the backbone, and I'm proud to be your granddaughter." I didn't say much, just pulled her into my arms and let her stay there as long as she needed. That weekend, we held a community event on the farm. There was music, laughter, food made from old family recipes. I sat beneath the oak tree with the ribbons fluttering above me like wind-borne prayers. A woman I didn't know approached. Her eyes were rimmed red. "Your story didn't just change my life," she said softly. "It gave it back." I looked around me at the women healing, at Ava helping string up lights, at Lily capturing it all on camera, and I realized something. I used to think I was too plain to be remembered. Now I know. I was never invisible. I was just waiting to shine in the right light. If you're a woman who's ever been told it's too late to start again, I want you to know you belong here. Thank you for listening to Real Her Stories. Subscribe, share, and leave a comment about the moment you found your voice. This story may have ended, but yours is just beginning.